Welcome to Room 57, where we delve into the most riveting and jaw-dropping criminal cases from around the world. Today, we embark on a journey through one of the most captivating cases in recent American history, the Alex Murdaugh case. It is a saga that involves corruption, betrayal, murder, and a family's downfall, all set against the backdrop of power, privilege, and deception in small-town South Carolina. The story of Alex Murdaugh begins with the rise of a legal dynasty, a family known for its wealth, influence, and control over the judicial system in the lowcountry of South Carolina. But beneath the surface of this seemingly untouchable family lay dark secrets and a web of criminal activity that would eventually come to light in the most shocking and tragic way possible. On June 7, 2021, the Murdaugh family's empire was rocked when Alex's wife, Maggie Murdaugh, and their youngest son, Paul Murdaugh, were found brutally murdered on the family's hunting estate. This horrific crime would lead to one of the most bizarre and tragic criminal cases in recent memory. It would take investigators, journalists, and the public more than a year to piece together the truth about what had happened that fateful night, and in the process, the case would expose a tangled web of lies, corruption, financial fraud, and betrayal. In this episode, we'll be exploring the rise of Alex Murdaugh and the family's legacy of power, wealth, and influence in South Carolina's legal world. But it's not just about a tragic murder, it's about the unraveling of a dynasty, the dark secrets that came to light, and the complex investigation that ultimately led to Alex Murdaugh's arrest for the murder of his own family. So, let's take a closer look at the Murdaugh family's legacy and how Alex Murdaugh went from being the scion of one of the most powerful families in South Carolina to a man accused of killing his wife and son in cold blood. Part 1. The Murdaugh family legacy and Alex's rise to power. To truly understand the magnitude of the Alex Murdaugh case, we need to go back in time to the rise of the Murdaugh family as one of the most influential and feared legal dynasties in the state of South Carolina. This is a story about power, privilege, and the dangerous consequences of being above the law. The Murdaugh family's legal legacy. Murdaugh family's roots in South Carolina's legal community stretch back more than a century. In fact, the Murdaughs are a fixture in the state's legal world, having dominated the area for generations. The family's history in law began with Randolph Murdaugh Sr., who founded the law firm PMP Parker, Murdaugh, and Parker Law Firm in 1910. The firm, which began as a small operation in Hampton, South Carolina, would grow over time to become one of the most well-known and powerful legal institutions in the Lowcountry region. By the time Randolph Murdaugh Jr., the patriarch's son, took over the firm, the Murdaugh family had already established itself as an indomitable force in the local legal community. Randolph Jr. served as the solicitor for the 14th Circuit District of South Carolina for more than 20 years, overseeing a region that encompassed several counties and had the authority to prosecute serious criminal cases. This office gave the Murdaugh family significant influence over local law enforcement and judicial processes. In many ways, they were untouchable, but the Murdaughs did not stop there. They solidified their hold on the region's legal landscape, wielding power and influence in local politics, businesses, and even the justice system. By the time Alex Murdaugh Randolph Jr.'s son came into the picture, the family was an integral part of South Carolina's legal system. They had built a legacy that was both admired and feared by many. Alex Murdaugh, the golden child of the Murdaugh dynasty, born in 1968. Alex Murdaugh was the youngest son of Randolph Murdaugh III, the son of the legendary Randolph Jr., with a family legacy of legal influence behind him. Alex was groomed from a young age to carry on the Murdaugh tradition. He was educated in the best schools, enrolled in the University of South Carolina's law school, and quickly made a name for himself as a skilled and charismatic lawyer. Following his graduation, Alex returned to the family law firm and began working alongside his father, Randolph III, and grandfather, Randolph Jr., before assuming the role of a partner at Parker Law Group. His position in the firm gave him access to influential clients and significant financial opportunities. However, Alex's path was not solely defined by his career. Like his ancestors, he grew up in the small town of Hampton, South Carolina, a place where everyone knew everyone else, and family ties ran deep. It was a town where power, reputation, and wealth were often intertwined. Alex married Maggie, a woman from a well-to-do family, and the two had two sons, Paul and Buster, creating the image of the ideal Southern family. Despite the outward success of his career and family life, Alex's rise to prominence was also built on a deep network of connections that extended beyond his professional work. His influence in the local community, coupled with his family's political and legal power, made him a trusted figure in both the public and private sectors. To many, he was the epitome of success, the heir to a long-standing legal dynasty, and a man destined for even greater things. But behind this polished exterior, Alex Murdaugh's life was far from perfect. The Murdaugh family had long maintained a reputation for being above reproach, but as we now know, there were many dark secrets hidden behind the closed doors of their law office and mansion. Financial success, but growing tensions in the years. Following Alex's rise to power, his life appeared to be a reflection of the Murdaugh family's success. His career was thriving, and his family appeared to be the epitome of Southern charm and wealth. However, as Alex's influence and power grew, so did the complexities of his life. The Murdaugh family's law firm had long been known for its involvement in personal injury cases, often representing clients who suffered significant losses in accidents, injuries, and even wrongful death. The firm's success in these cases brought in substantial settlements, but there were whispers in the legal world about some questionable practices. For years, Alex's lifestyle became more extravagant. He was known for his lavish parties, his love for high-end clothing, and his frequent visits to the family's hunting estate in Island, South Carolina. But beneath this outward show of success, Alex was facing mounting personal pressures. His marriage to Maggie, while outwardly stable, began to show signs of strain. At the same time, Alex's professional life was not as squeaky clean as it appeared. The fall of the Murdaugh dynasty in the scenes, Alex was struggling to maintain the family's vast wealth. In the months leading up to the deaths of his wife and son, Alex had allegedly been involved in a number of financial scandals, including embezzling money from the law firm. His scheme involved using his position at the firm to steal millions from client settlements, which he funneled into his personal bank accounts. As Alex faced growing pressure over these financial discrepancies, his life began to unravel. His once untouchable position in the legal world was now at risk, and his family's carefully crafted reputation was beginning to show signs of decay. The Murdaugh legacy, which had been built on decades of legal influence, was crumbling. Little did the world know, this was just the beginning of a much darker chapter in the Murdaugh family's story. The murder of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh in June 2021 would change everything. It would not only shatter the illusion of the perfect family, but would reveal a web of corruption, deceit, and a series of events that would leave the entire state and eventually the country in shock. In the next part of our series, we'll dive into the chilling murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, exploring the investigation, the bizarre circumstances surrounding their deaths, and how the Murdaugh family's darkest secrets were ultimately exposed to the world. Conclusion of Part 1. The Murdaugh family's legacy of power and influence in South Carolina is an integral part of the Alex Murdaugh case. For decades, they were untouchable figures, revered and feared by those around them. But as we have seen, the story of the Murdaughs is not one of unbroken success and prestige. It is a tale of secrets, corruption, and the fall of a dynasty. The stage is now set for the unraveling of Alex Murdaugh's life and the tragic deaths that would send shockwaves through a quiet southern town and ultimately the entire nation. Stay tuned for the next chapter as we delve into the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, the investigation that followed, and the chilling revelations that emerged from the depths of the Murdaugh family's empire. Part 2. The murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, a family's tragic end. Will come back to room 57. In the previous episode, we explored the rise of the Murdaugh family and the untouchable power they held over the South Carolina legal landscape. But in June 2021, the seemingly flawless image of the Murdaughs would be shattered forever. This time, we will dive deep into the events surrounding the tragic murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, two killings that shocked not only the small town of Hampton, but also the entire nation. This was not just a case of familial tragedy. It was the catalyst that would expose decades of deceit, corruption, and lies. Join us as we piece together the events of that fateful night, the investigation that followed, and the shocking revelations that turned Alex Murdaugh's life from one of power and prestige to the center of one of America's most sensational criminal cases. The tragic night of June 7th, 2021. The Murdaugh family story was about to take a deadly turn on the evening of June 7, 2021. It started like any other evening at the family's sprawling hunting estate in Island, South Carolina. But by the next morning, the Murdaughs would be in the midst of a tragedy that would forever alter their lives and the lives of many others. Maggie Murdaugh, 52, and her son Paul Murdaugh, 22, were discovered dead at the family's estate. The crime scene was gruesome and horrifying. Maggie had been shot multiple times with a rifle, while Paul, who had been with her at the time, was shot in the head with a shotgun. The authorities would later describe the scene as chaotic, with the victims left lying near the dog kennels of the estate. At 10:07 p.m. on June 7, 2021, Alex Murdaugh placed a frantic 911 call. The call was chilling, with Alex telling the dispatcher that he had arrived at the family estate to find his wife and son lying dead. In the call, Alex mentioned that he had just been at his mother's house before discovering the crime scene. He claimed to have found the bodies near the dog kennels on the property. "I've been at my mom's house. I just got back, and I found my wife and son. They've been shot," Alex says in the 911 call. his voice trembling with emotion. "Please hurry, please hurry." The initial investigation into the deaths was chaotic, and there were many questions that needed to be answered. Why were they killed? Was Alex Murdaugh involved? And what was the motive behind such a brutal crime? The immediate investigation and the mysterious circumstances soon as the authorities arrived at the crime scene. They were faced with several perplexing aspects of the case. One of the most striking elements was the fact that Maggie and Paul had been murdered in the family's backyard in a relatively secluded area near the kennels. While this could suggest a random attack or robbery, there were factors that made the case appear more personal. The Murdaugh family, after all, had enemies, but they also had a network of loyal allies, many of whom were involved in law enforcement. The initial investigation into the murders did not lead to any immediate suspects. The Murdaugh family, after all, had long been respected and feared in their community. Alex, especially, was well known, having served as a prominent lawyer and the scion of a powerful legal dynasty. The fact that Alex was so emotionally distraught on the night of the murders further complicated matters, as investigators had to consider the possibility that he might be involved. However, as the investigation unfolded, several elements of the case raised suspicions that Alex Murdaugh himself was somehow connected to the deaths of his wife and son. While Alex's 911 call seemed sincere, there were strange details that began to emerge over time. For one, the timing of his call raised questions. Alex had told authorities that he had been at his mother's house at the time of the murders, but neighbors and friends would later report that they had seen him near the estate hours before the killings occurred. Additionally, investigators began to uncover a series of financial issues that Alex had been hiding. These issues, ranging from embezzlement to insurance fraud, began to make Alex a more likely suspect. Would a man with so much to lose resort to murder to cover up his crimes? Or was there another explanation for the brutal killings? The investigation deepens Alex's connection to the murders. The investigation into the deaths of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh continued. Several disturbing pieces of evidence began to surface. One of the most glaring red flags was Alex's behavior in the days following the murders. Despite the traumatic loss of his wife and son, Alex was spotted in public, acting strangely calm and collected. He was even seen shopping at a local store just hours after the bodies were discovered. This behavior struck many as odd, especially for someone who had just lost to close family members in such a horrific way. Furthermore, as law enforcement officials continued to probe deeper into Alex's financial dealings, they found troubling patterns of fraud and deceit. It appeared that Alex had been stealing money from his own law firm, Parker Law Group, and had been involved in several illegal financial schemes for years. Alex had also allegedly been using money from his clients' settlements to fuel his lavish lifestyle, and the extent of his embezzlement was staggering. One of the most shocking discoveries was that Alex had allegedly orchestrated a botched suicide attempt just weeks before the murders of his wife and son. In September 2021, Alex had hired a man to shoot him in an apparent suicide attempt, hoping to make it look like a random act of violence. He survived the attempt, but the connection between this event and the murders of his wife and son was becoming increasingly clear. Was this the act of a man who had lost control? Or was it part of a larger, more calculated scheme to cover up his involvement in the murders? Investigators also began to focus on Alex's strained relationship with his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul. It was revealed that Paul had been facing serious legal trouble at the time of his death. In 2019, Paul had been involved in a boating accident in which a young woman, Mallory Beach, was killed. The case had drawn significant media attention, and Paul had become a target of public criticism. It was suggested that Maggie had been worried about the potential fallout from Paul's legal troubles, which may have caused tension in the family. Despite these discoveries, there was still no direct evidence linking Alex to the murders. The case seemed to be at a standstill, with authorities unable to determine whether Alex was a victim of an unsolved crime or the mastermind behind the deaths of his wife and son. The shocking arrest of Alex Murdaugh it wasn't until several months later that the investigation into the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh took a dramatic turn. On September 16, 2021, Alex Murdaugh was arrested and charged with the murders of his wife and son. The arrest came after investigators uncovered further evidence of Alex's involvement in financial crimes and his role in orchestrating the killings. Authorities revealed that Alex had been stealing millions of dollars from his law firm and clients for years, using the money to fund his lifestyle and to cover up his crimes. The arrest also coincided with the discovery that Alex had been involved in a long-running scheme of financial fraud, which had been uncovered through a series of investigations into his business dealings. The charges against Alex Murdaugh included 2 counts of murder, along with several additional charges related to his financial crimes. The arrest of Alex sent shockwaves through the legal community and the state of South Carolina. It was a stunning development that raised more questions than answers. Had Alex killed his wife and son to cover up his financial crimes? Or was there another motive at play? Conclusion apart to the deaths of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh have become one of the most haunting and tragic criminal cases in recent American history. In just a few short months, the case has gone from a mysterious and shocking double murder to an unraveling tale of deceit, financial fraud, and a family's downfall. The investigation continues to unfold, and the true extent of Alex Murdaugh's crimes is yet to be fully revealed. In the next part of our series, we will delve deeper into Alex Murdaugh's trial and the dramatic twists and turns that have kept the public on edge. Stay tuned as we continue to explore the chilling details of the Murdaugh family's tragic fall from grace. Part 3, The Rest, the Trial, and the Unraveling of a Legal Dynasty. Welcome back to Room 57. In our previous episodes, we explored the rise of Alex Murdaugh and his family's powerful legal dynasty, followed by the shocking murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, which ignited a media frenzy and left the public wondering if the patriarch of the family, Alex, could be involved. What began as a family tragedy quickly spiraled into a complicated web of financial crimes, cover-ups, and betrayals. Now, we turn our attention to the pivotal moment that stunned the world, the arrest of Alex Murdaugh, his trial, and the dramatic revelations that followed. In this episode, we'll dig deep into the legal drama, the shocking trial of Alex Murdaugh, and the catastrophic unraveling of a once untouchable family. We'll analyze the charges against Alex, the court proceedings, the intense media coverage, and the explosive revelations that made the Murdaugh case one of the most high-profile criminal trials in modern American history. The arrest of Alex Murdaugh. A legal dynasty crumbles in September 16, 2021. Nearly 3 months after the murders of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul, Alex Murdaugh was arrested on charges of murder and financial crimes. The arrest was a culmination of months of investigation, in which Alex's involvement in the brutal killings of his family members began to emerge more clearly. But, as is often the case with high-profile investigations, the arrest was just the beginning of what would become an intricate and highly publicized legal battle. Alex Murdaugh was charged with 2 counts of murder, one for the death of his wife, Maggie, and another for his son, Paul. These charges followed an exhaustive probe into the financial mismanagement, embezzlement, and fraud that had been uncovered during the investigation into the murders. What had initially seemed like a shocking but isolated tragedy now appeared to be part of a much larger, more complex criminal scheme. On top of the murder charges, Alex Murdaugh faced numerous charges of financial crimes. These included allegations of stealing millions of dollars from his clients and his law firm, Parker Law Group. Investigators discovered that Alex had been funneling large sums of money into his own pockets for years, misappropriating client funds and committing fraud in a way that was deeply damaging to his clients and the firm's reputation. The arrest of Alex Murdaugh shocked the nation. Here was a man who had once been a figure of authority and trust in his community, an attorney with a long career in law enforcement, and a family deeply embedded in the legal fabric of South Carolina. Now, he was facing not only the murder charges of his wife and son, but also a massive financial fraud scandal that spanned years. For many, the arrest represented the fall of an empire. The Murdaugh name had been synonymous with power, wealth, and influence. Yet, Alex Murdaugh's arrest marked the beginning of the end for a family that had once been untouchable. The legal drama, Alex Murdaugh's court appearances, and bail hearing following his arrest. Alex Murdaugh's legal battles began in earnest. In October 2021, he appeared in court for his first bail hearing. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of the man they accused of orchestrating the murders of his own wife and son. Assistant Attorney General Creighton Waters stated that Alex had meticulously planned the killings to divert attention away from his financial crimes. Murdaugh's legal team, led by a high-powered defense attorney, argued that there was insufficient evidence to warrant such severe charges. They claimed that Alex was a broken man, grieving the loss of his family, and that the accusations against him were politically motivated. They also raised concerns about his mental state, given his history of depression and the mounting financial and personal stress he had been under at the time of the murders. Despite the defense's arguments, the judge ruled to deny Alex Murdaugh bail, citing the severity of the charges and the possibility that he might pose a flight risk. Alex's legal team vowed to fight the charges, but the stage was set for a long, drawn-out trial. As the case progressed, the media spotlight turned even brighter on the Murdaugh family. Journalists and reporters camped outside the courthouse, eagerly awaiting updates on the trial. The public's fascination with the case only grew as new details emerged about the Murdaughs' personal lives, their financial dealings, and the events leading up to the murders. The role of financial crimes, embezzlement, and fraud uncovered. One of the most staggering aspects of the case was the extensive financial fraud that Alex Murdaugh had been involved in. Over the years, he had allegedly stolen millions of dollars from his clients, some of whom had trusted him with their most personal and sensitive legal matters. The victims of his fraud included the families of deceased individuals who had been owed settlements and funds for wrongful death claims. Instead of distributing those funds, Alex allegedly siphoned them off for personal use. Alex's thefts were not only morally reprehensible, but also legally disastrous. His financial mismanagement and fraud had far-reaching consequences, particularly for the families who had been left without the settlements they so desperately needed. Many of these families were left in the dark, unaware of the thefts, until they were uncovered during the investigation into the murders. It was revealed that Alex had been using his position as a trusted liar to divert money into his personal accounts. The scale of the theft was staggering. Some estimates suggested that he had embezzled up to $8.5 million from clients, colleagues, and the firm itself. The magnitude of these financial crimes was staggering, and it quickly became clear that the murders were likely tied to Alex's desperate need to cover up his growing debts and illegal activities. Investigators discovered that Alex's financial situation had become unsustainable in the months leading up to the killings, and the mounting pressure may have been a driving force behind his decision to murder his wife and son. The public reaction, media sensation, and public fascination as the investigation continued. The case gained immense media attention, with reporters from across the country following every twist and turn. The Murdaugh family's fall from grace was one of the most sensational stories in recent American criminal history. The story was a perfect storm of wealth, power, and tragedy. Alex Murdaugh, a man once viewed as a trusted member of his community, was now at the center of a media frenzy. In addition to the criminal charges, the media was captivated by the complexities of the Murdaugh family's history. The narrative of a family built on generations of legal prowess was shattered by a series of tragic events, from the death of Mallory Beach in a boating accident to the gruesome murders of Maggie and Paul. The media covered every angle of the case, speculating on motives, potential conspiracies, and the Murdaugh family's deep ties to South Carolina's political and legal systems. Public fascination with the case was also fueled by the mystery surrounding Alex Murdaugh himself. How could a man who seemed so outwardly normal, an attorney with a successful career and a seemingly happy family, commit such horrific acts? And how could he have kept his dark side hidden for so long? With Alex Murdaugh's arrest, the story took on a life of its own, becoming a national obsession. People across the country followed the case closely, with many discussing the case on social media, dissecting every detail and forming their own theories about what happened. The trial, the fight for justice. The trial of Alex Murdaugh began in early 2023, and the courtroom was packed with spectators eager to hear what would come next in the case. The prosecution painted a picture of a man who had killed his wife and son to cover up his years of financial fraud and theft. The defense argued that Alex was a victim of circumstances and that the killings were the work of an unknown assailant. The trial was a legal spectacle, with both sides presenting compelling arguments. The prosecution's case was based on the financial crimes Alex had committed, his apparent motive to kill his family to avoid exposure, and the mounting evidence that linked him to the crime scene. The defense, however, argued that there was not enough concrete evidence to convict Alex and that the case was built on speculation. As the trial unfolded, shocking new revelations came to light, including testimony from those who had known Alex personally and from family members and colleagues who spoke about his behavior leading up to the murders. It became clear that Alex Murdaugh was not the man he had once appeared to be. Instead, he was a man desperate to cover up his past, willing to go to any lengths to protect his reputation, his wealth, and his freedom. Conclusion of Part 3. The trial of Alex Murdaugh has become one of the most dramatic and shocking legal battles in recent history. With so many twists and turns, this case has captured the attention of the public and left many wondering what truly happened. On the night of June 7, 2021, as the trial continues, one thing is clear: the Murdaugh family's tragic story will have far-reaching implications for the legal system, law enforcement, and the people who trusted Alex Murdaugh for so many years. Stay tuned for the next part of the series, where we'll take a closer look at the final moments of Alex Murdaugh's trial and the aftermath of his conviction. The story of the Murdaugh family may have started with tragedy, but its resolution promises to be just as dramatic as the case itself. Part 4, the verdict, aftermath, and legacy of the Murdaugh case. We reach the final chapter in our deep dive into the case of Alex Murdaugh. We witness the culmination of a criminal saga that has shocked the nation. From the seemingly untouchable empire of the Murdaugh family to Alex Murdaugh's arrest, trial, and conviction, the case has been a whirlwind of legal drama, emotional testimonies, and revelations of a dark side of a man once seen as a pillar of his community. In this segment, we will focus on the explosive conclusion of the trial, the aftermath of Alex Murdaugh's conviction, and the lasting legacy this case will leave on South Carolina's legal and political systems. Additionally, we will reflect on the victims Maggie and Paul Murdaugh and the broader implications of this case. For the American justice system, the trial reaches its climax, closing arguments, and the verdict after months of gripping courtroom testimony. The trial of Alex Murdaugh finally came to a head in early 2023. The case against him was strong, with the prosecution painting a picture of a man desperate to maintain his position of power and wealth, willing to do anything, kill his own family included, to avoid the consequences of his mounting financial crimes. The jury had a significant burden placed upon them. The defense, however, continued to argue that the case against Alex was built on speculation and circumstantial evidence, questioning the very foundation of the murder allegations. The closing arguments in the final day of the trial, both the prosecution and the defense presented their closing arguments. The prosecution had meticulously built a case over several weeks, presenting evidence of Alex's involvement in his wife and son's deaths, connecting his financial crimes to the killings, and underscoring the chilling motive behind the murders. They argued that Alex, facing the collapse of his legal and financial empire, had murdered Maggie and Paul in a desperate attempt to cover up years of embezzlement and fraud. Creighton Waters, the lead prosecutor, began the closing by reminding the jury of the key pieces of evidence: Alex's own admission of lying to the police, the financial fraud, the discrepancies in his alibi, and the lack of any evidence pointing to a third-party killer. He emphasized that Alex had every reason to commit the murders and that he had done so with cold calculation. The prosecution also discussed Alex's apparent indifference to the murders, as he tried to portray himself as the grieving husband and father despite his prior actions. On the defense side, Jim Griffin and Richard Harpootlian presented a vastly different narrative. They argued that there was no direct evidence that Alex had committed the murders, and that the prosecution's case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. The defense posited that Alex's financial problems did not directly link him to the deaths of his wife and son. They also raised doubts about the crime scene investigation and questioned the reliability of witness testimonies that painted Alex as guilty. They stressed that Alex's emotional distress following the deaths, as well as his grief-stricken behavior, should be enough to cast doubt on his involvement. Ultimately, the closing arguments came down to a battle between two compelling narratives: one of a man who had been pushed to the brink of financial collapse and resorted to murder to protect his empire, and another of a man who was falsely accused, with his grief and personal life hijacked by a broken system. The verdict in March 2nd, 2023. After deliberating for just under 3 hours, the jury reached its verdict: guilty on the counts of first-degree murder. Alex Murdaugh was convicted of killing his wife, Maggie, and their son, Paul, in a calculated and brutal fashion. The verdict brought a sense of closure to the long-running saga that had unfolded in South Carolina, but it also marked a moment of reckoning for the Murdaugh family. The courtroom erupted in emotional reactions as the family and friends of the victims expressed relief, while others, including Alex's own attorneys, appeared visibly shaken. For Alex Murdaugh, the verdict meant that he would face a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. However, the fallout from the trial wasn't over. As the legal process moved forward, the true scope of the case began to reveal itself. The sentencing: life behind bars on March 3, 2023. Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to life in prison for the murders of his wife and son. The sentencing was a solemn affair, with Maggie and Paul surviving family members speaking directly to the court about the profound impact of their deaths. Maggie's sister, Marion Proctor, addressed the court, tearfully recounting the life her family had lost, while Paul's friends spoke of how the young man had a bright future, stolen by his father's actions. Alex Murdaugh stood stoically in the courtroom, showing little emotion as the verdict was handed down. His legal team had hoped for a lighter sentence or a possibility of parole, but the judge had made it clear that the severity of the crimes, the cold-blooded nature of the killings, and the public outrage surrounding the case made parole an unlikely option. The victims' families were able to find some semblance of closure, though it will never erase the pain they carry with them. For them, justice was served, but the emotional scars left by the murders of Maggie and Paul will last a lifetime. The fallout, Murdaugh's finances, and ongoing investigation spawned the verdict. For the murders, the Murdaugh case had profound financial implications, with ongoing investigations into Alex Murdaugh's embezzlement and fraud. The financial crimes Alex Murdaugh committed during his time as a lawyer have had a ripple effect on his former law firm, Parker Law Group, and the clients he defrauded. The scale of the financial mismanagement was vast, with some estimating that Alex had stolen over $8.5 million from his clients. This embezzlement included settlement funds intended for families of victims in wrongful death lawsuits, personal injury claims, and other legal cases. These financial crimes added another layer of complexity to the Murdaugh saga. As more victims came forward and the true extent of Alex's fraud became clearer, In addition to the financial crimes, Alex's case sparked an investigation into the broader legal community in South Carolina. The Murdaugh family's entanglement in the legal system raised concerns about the influence of powerful families within the state's judicial processes. There were growing calls for reforms to prevent such corruption from happening again. The Murdaugh case served as a cautionary tale of how unchecked power, wealth, and influence can perpetuate cycles of abuse, fraud, and injustice. The legacy of the Murdaugh-Cassidy Alex Murdaugh case will undoubtedly go down in history as one of the most complex and sensational criminal cases in American legal history. It has had profound implications not only for the victims and their families, but also for the broader community in South Carolina and the nation. Legal and societal implications first and foremost, the Murdaugh case has highlighted significant flaws in the judicial system, particularly with regard to the influence of powerful families in local politics and law. The Murdaugh family's grip on the legal system allowed Alex to exploit his position for years, dodging accountability for his fraudulent activities and his involvement in the deaths of his wife and son. The case has sparked widespread debates about reforming how legal and political power is concentrated in certain families, and what steps should be taken to ensure transparency, fairness, and accountability. The use of genetic genealogy in solving cold cases, such as the Golden State Killer case, has also been an important part of how the justice system is evolving. But the Murdaugh case shows the importance of going beyond just solving one case. There are lessons to be learned about the systemic flaws that allowed Alex Murdaugh to thrive within the legal world for so long. For those who have been impacted by the Murdaugh legacy, there is hope that his conviction might be the first step toward breaking the cycle of corruption. The Murdaugh family's future and South Carolina's reckoning, while Alex Murdaugh's fate is sealed, the consequences for his family and for the state of South Carolina are ongoing. The Murdaugh name, once synonymous with power and legal prowess, is now forever tarnished. For the surviving members of the Murdaugh family, the future will likely be marked by rebuilding their lives and dealing with the emotional and financial fallout from Alex's crimes. The Murdaugh name may never regain its former stature in South Carolina, and those who were once drawn into the Murdaugh orbit will have to reckon with the consequences of their association. As for South Carolina, the state's reckoning is just beginning. The Murdaugh case has exposed deep issues of corruption, lack of oversight, and unchecked power. The public's response has been one of shock, dismay, and, in many cases, a desire for change. As the investigation into the family's financial crimes continues, and as reforms are debated in the wake of the case, South Carolina may face a long road toward repairing the damage done to its legal and political systems. Conclusion: a family's legacy of tragedied Alex Murdaugh case is a stark reminder of how power can corrupt, how privilege can enable criminal behavior, and how justice, while sometimes delayed, will ultimately prevail. For Maggie and Paul Murdaugh, justice has come too late, but their deaths have sparked conversations that may lead to meaningful change in South Carolina and beyond. As Alex Murdaugh now faces life in prison for his heinous acts, the story of his family's rise and fall will continue to haunt those who were affected by their actions. The Murdaugh case will be remembered not only for the tragic loss of 2 innocent lives, but for the long-lasting consequences it has had on the legal community, the justice system, and the broader societal conversation about corruption and accountability. Part 5. Social impact and societal reflection. The Alex Murdaugh case is not just a story of family tragedy and legal drama, but one that has sparked deep reflections on the role of power, privilege, and the justice system. This high-profile trial has left an indelible mark on the public consciousness, prompting a wider societal conversation about corruption, accountability, and the potential abuse of influence in legal circles. The case has raised questions about the role of the media, public perception of justice, and how the law can be manipulated when people in power exploit their positions. Below, we'll explore the far-reaching implications of the Murdaugh case, not only on the individuals involved, but also on the broader societal structure. 5. 1. The role of power and privilege. Alex Murdaugh's family was once considered a symbol of wealth, status, and influence within South Carolina's legal community. The Murdaughs, a multi-generational family of attorneys, held significant sway over local courts and law enforcement, positioning themselves as pillars of the community. For decades, they were seen as untouchable, their names synonymous with justice in Hampton County and the surrounding areas. However, when Alex Murdaugh's dark secrets began to surface, it became painfully evident how power and privilege can corrupt. What started as a tragic family murder turned into a deep dive into decades of manipulation, cover-ups, and a perversion of the legal system. The case uncovered shocking details about how Murdaugh's family used their wealth and influence to shield themselves from legal repercussions for crimes ranging from embezzlement to drug abuse. In many ways, The Murdaugh case is a cautionary tale about how unchecked power can shape the course of justice and hinder the very system meant to protect the public. Murdaugh's background in the legal field, coupled with his family's history of dominance in the courts, created an environment where his actions were able to go unnoticed for so long. He was able to manipulate people into doing his bidding, and even after committing egregious acts, he believed his family's legacy would protect him from prosecution. The sense of invincibility that Alex Murdaugh embodied reflected a larger issue in society, the extent to which wealth and status can shape one's experience of justice. 5.2. The role of media coverage in Murdaugh trial has been a media spectacle from the moment the case gained public attention. In an era where true crime stories have captured the imagination of millions, the Murdaugh family scandal was an irresistible narrative. As the case unfolded, the media's role in shaping the public's understanding of the story became critical. Media outlets, both local and national, relentlessly covered the case, turning it into a saga of crime, betrayal, and family secrets. The Murdaugh story, with its mix of privilege, mystery, and murder, was ideal for the true crime genre. As the investigation grew more complex, so did the media's role in keeping the case in the public eye. From sensational headlines to in-depth, investigative reports, the media served as both the purveyor of facts and the creator of narratives that shaped public perception. However, as the media's coverage intensified, questions arose about its impact on the case's fairness. While the media undoubtedly played a vital role in keeping the public informed, it also raised concerns about the sensationalization of criminal trials. Alex Murdaugh's case was not just a matter of public interest, it became a public spectacle. Some critics argue that the level of media attention might have interfered with the judicial process, making it harder for the defense to present a fair case and for jurors to remain unbiased. On the other hand, the media's scrutiny of the case also brought attention to the legal and social issues at play, issues that would have otherwise remained obscured. The story of a man in power using his influence to avoid justice resonated deeply with many, drawing attention to the systemic problems within the legal system, especially in rural communities where the Murdaugh family's power was most prominent. 5.3. Public perception and changing attitudes toward justice. The Alex Murdaugh case has reshaped how many perceive justice, especially in small-town America. Before the case, many in South Carolina's Lowcountry may have seen the Murdaughs as trustworthy figures who upheld the law. They were leaders, community benefactors, and even perceived as a sort of legal royalty. However, as the details of Alex's actions became public, that perception crumbled. The case shifted the narrative from the Murdaugh family as champions of justice to embodiments of its corruption. For the first time, the public realized that even those who are meant to enforce the law can use their position for personal gain. This revelation has led many to question the integrity of the legal system in small communities, where powerful families hold significant sway. As the trial unfolded, people began to look more critically at how wealth and power can shield individuals from facing consequences. It sparked a broader societal reflection on the imbalance of justice, particularly for those who were not part of the elite class. The Murdaugh case exposed the darker side of rural legal systems, where influence could trump accountability, and it reignited debates about criminal justice reform across the country. 5.4. Impact on the legal system. The Murdaugh case highlighted significant flaws in the legal system, especially regarding how cases involving powerful individuals are handled. The case raised concerns about potential conflicts of interest in small-town legal systems, where relationships between law enforcement, attorneys, and local leaders can create an atmosphere of complicity. The fact that Alex Murdaugh was able to continue his illegal activities for so long is a testament to the system's failure to hold those in power accountable. The case has spurred calls for greater transparency in the legal system, particularly in rural communities where such abuses of power often go unchecked. Many have argued that legal reforms are necessary to ensure that individuals with influence, like Murdaugh, are not able to use their position to escape justice. Public officials and legal experts have started advocating for more oversight in rural courts and for policies that can prevent future corruption within local law enforcement agencies. Additionally, the case has highlighted the need for more support for the victims of such crimes. The families affected by Alex Murdaugh's actions, particularly the surviving members of the victims, have been forced to endure not only their grief, but also a long, drawn-out legal process. Their fight for justice has sparked a wider discussion about how the legal system treats crime victims and how improvements can be made to ensure they are not further victimized by a flawed system. Part 6. The lasting legacy of the Murdaugh cases. The legal proceedings continue to unfold. The lasting impact of the Alex Murdaugh case will be felt for years to come. The case has raised important questions about power, privilege, and the functioning of the criminal justice system in America. It has provided a lens through which to examine the dark side of the legal world and the way it intersects with wealth and power. 6.1 Cultural reflection. And Change. Murdaugh case has become a focal point in conversations about societal inequality and the need for change in how power is distributed and exercised. It has sparked a cultural shift where people are becoming more aware of the dangers of unchecked privilege. The scandal has prompted discussions about transparency, accountability, and the importance of ensuring that those in positions of power are held to the same standards as everyone else. As the case continues to make headlines, it has ignited a conversation about how the legal and political systems in small towns and rural areas operate. The Murdaugh case has become a symbol of the corruption that can arise when families in power dominate local institutions. The aftermath of the case has led to widespread calls for reform and for a reimagining of how justice should function in communities where power dynamics often tip the scales in favor of the wealthy and influential. 6.2 The road ahead for the Murdaugh family. For Alex Murdaugh and his family, the road ahead is marked by loss, destruction, and an uncertain future. Alex faces a lengthy prison sentence and has become a symbol of the corruption and decay that can exist within legal systems. His family, once seen as pillars of the community, now has to grapple with the collapse of their legacy. The Murdaugh family will forever be tied to one of the most infamous criminal trials in modern history, and their name will likely never be associated with justice in the same way it once was. Their legacy, once built on wealth and influence, has been tarnished beyond repair. For the community, the trial is far from over. The psychological and emotional scars left by the Murdaugh case will take years to heal. For many, the case will serve as a reminder of the power of the media and public opinion, as well as the dangers of unchecked influence in the legal system. 6.3 The Murdaugh case's impact on legal reform and public trust. As we look to the future, the Murdaugh case will undoubtedly influence legal reforms in the United States. It has laid bare the vulnerabilities in the legal system, particularly when it comes to how cases involving the powerful are handled. The public outcry that followed the case has made it clear that significant changes need to be made to ensure fairness and accountability. The case has also highlighted the importance of restoring public trust in the legal system. For many, the Murdaugh scandal has exposed the deep cracks in the system that allow for manipulation and abuse of power. Restoring faith in the law will require a commitment to transparency, justice, and, most importantly, equality for all individuals, regardless of their social or financial standing. In the end, the legacy of the Alex Murdaugh case is still being written. The repercussions of his actions will be felt for years to come, and the lessons learned will shape the future of legal reform in America. Call to action CTA if you found this deep dive into the Alex Murdaugh case as compelling as we did. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Let us know in the comments below what you think about the role of power in shaping justice. How do you feel about the media's coverage of high-profile cases? Stay tuned for more in-depth explorations here on Room 57, where we continue to bring you the most intriguing criminal mysteries and the stories behind them.